President Donald Trump says it was his decision to fire his FBI director, calling James Comey a grandstander and showboater. Speaking to American broadcaster NBC, Trump also admits he asked Comey if he was personally under investigation for ties to Russia, and that the former director said no. In the interview, Trump contradicted the White House's explanation for why Comey was let go. The White House earlier stated the president fired Comey on the advice of the Justice Department, but Trump says it was his decision.
He's a showboat. He's a grandstander. The FBI has been in turmoil. You know that. I know that. Everybody knows that. You take a look at the FBI a year ago. It was in virtual turmoil less than a year ago. It hasn't recovered from that. I just want somebody that's competent.
Well, Lorna Shattuck is following all of this from New York and joins us now live. Lorna, we saw there a short snippet of what Donald Trump had to say to NBC. It's his first interview since he fired James Comey. What else came out from that discussion?
Well, one of the key takeaways, as you've already said, is that Donald Trump's version of events appears to differ quite significantly from the timeline that the White House press team has been putting out via press conferences and statements over the last 48 hours or so. They have been saying that all this was set in motion by the Deputy Attorney General, who'd been in the job a couple of weeks or so, Rod Rosenstein, who was reviewing Mr. Comey's tenure at the FBI, and then had a meeting with the President and the Attorney General, Jeff Sessions, on Monday, during which he presented his findings in that memo, which the President then went on to act on in his decision on Tuesday to fire Mr. Comey. That was supposedly the timeline, but Mr. Trump blew that out of the water in this interview, said he'd always been thinking of firing Mr. Comey, and he would have done that whatever the Justice Department had recommended. So the President and the press office singing from very different hymn sheets. Second takeaway as well is we learned the reasoning for the firing wasn't anything to do with policy or procedure, but as we heard in that clip, much more personality. Clearly, Mr. Trump did not like what he called that showboating and grandstanding from the FBI director, and there has been some reporting in Washington over the last few days or so that Mr. Trump was increasingly angered by all the attention that the FBI director was getting when he was testifying in Congress. But thirdly, we also learned a little bit more about that claim that we saw in the letter from Donald Trump to Director Comey firing him, claiming that the director had assured him 3 times that the president was not under investigation. In the interview, Donald Trump elaborated a bit on that and said that one of those instances was during a dinner and the other 2 were during phone calls. But that is significant because FBI officials aren't supposed to comment on the status of ongoing investigations. So if indeed that did happen, it would have been breaking FBI rules.
Meanwhile, Lorna, in further developments, the New York Times has published an account of what they say happened at a dinner between Trump and James Comey back in January. What did we learn?
Yes, this is absolutely fascinating. We don't know if it's the same dinner that I was just talking about, the one that Donald Trump mentions, during which he was assured, supposedly, he says, by Director Comey that he wasn't under investigation. But we do know that the 2 men have only dined together, as far as we know, only once. So perhaps this is the same one. But the paper reports that during that dinner, Donald Trump asked Director Comey, as far as Director Comey has said to 2 associates, the paper reports, that the president asked the director not once but twice for his quote-unquote loyalty, and the director replied and said he couldn't have his sort of political loyalty, but he would promise always to be honest with the president. And clearly he feels that that was the wrong answer as far as Donald Trump was concerned, and Mr. Trump was attempting to get him to stay on side and be a bit more political. And that, of course, is interesting because FBI directors are supposed to remain politically above the fray. They are appointed for a tenure of 10 years deliberately so that they go over the tenure of more than one president, so they aren't seen as belonging to one particular president or another. And if indeed Mr. Comey's account is correct, and this is being reported only by the New York Times at the moment, but if that account is correct, then it seems the president was attempting to get Mr. Comey to be loyal only to him and to be a little bit more political than FBI directors are supposed to be.
OK, Lorna, thank you.